Oh, the predicament of the Golden State Warriors. Class of the NBA for 5 years, now perhaps nothing more than a middling team with virtually nothing to play for. I'm Chris Hassel from CBS Sports. Now, this is a Warriors team that won the 2015 NBA title, then set a record for wins in a season a year later. Then they won 2 more titles in 17 and 18, perhaps the most dominant 5-year stretch in modern-day hoops. And if KD and Klay could have stayed healthy in the 2019 finals, maybe they'd have 4 titles in 5 seasons. And maybe they'd both be playing for the Warriors right now. Instead, KD is rehabbing with the Nets, Klay is rehabbing with the Warriors, and Golden State, after making 5 straight NBA finals, may not even make the playoffs this spring. This is not your older brother's Golden State Warriors. Here's Draymond Green.
The reality of it is we're just not capable of doing that right now. I would like to see us play harder. That'll help a little bit, but the reality is we suck right now, and hopefully we'll get better. We'll continue working at it and try to get better, but we're just not that good right now. And I don't know what better way to frame that for you or tell it. I could try in Spanish, but I ain't really that good at Spanish. That's really the best way I can tell it to you right now.
He ain't lying. We've got Raja Bell with us here. Raja, I don't think any of us expected this team to go and win 60 games or anything like that, or maybe even get to the Western Conference Finals, but we expected them to be a playoff team. Right now, they're barely competing in games.
Yeah, look, it's when you lose that type of talent, and the NBA is a star-driven league, when you're going to be without Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, I was already worried for them, even if they had Steph and Draymond. I thought they could compete for an 8 spot, but I wasn't ready to pencil them in to the playoffs with that. That's a lot of talent missing. Not to mention, and I always talk about the supporting cast that those guys had over that stretch of time. You discount the names like Andre Iguodala and Leandro Barbosa at times, and Andrew Bogut and Sean Livingston. Those names really came in and played huge minutes for them, and we often discount the supporting cast. They weren't going to have that this year. So, this is a team that's just depleted from a talent standpoint. Nobody necessarily saw it being this bad with Draymond out with the finger injury and Steph Curry also out with the wrist. But it provides opportunity for other guys to step up and be noticed.
And there are some fans out there kind of whispering the T word, tank, because nowadays in the NBA and even the NFL, some other sports as well, if you're not competing for a championship, some believe that the best thing for you is just to lose as many games as possible and get the best draft pick as possible. All right, this is what the owner, Joe Lacob, had to say. We will fight like hell, develop our young guys, learn to win. You don't get better by trying to lose. Our entire organization is about winning, and we will win. Some bumps in the road, perhaps, but we will never accept losing. What's your take on that and the T word as it pertains to the Warriors?
Yeah, I appreciate the mindset there by Joe Lacob. Organizationally, they have been about winning. It's hard to shift from and pivot from winning to let's just try to lose, and everything that we put stock in is out the window now as we are in search of this #1 pick. I don't believe that should be the philosophy. So I appreciate the fact that they are going to go out there and develop some of that young talent that they have, make some decisions on some of those pieces that they may have got, in free agency that they weren't really sure about whether or not could be able to contribute at the NBA level, all while, Draymond and Steph and Klay are getting healthy. You're going to lose anyway. You're going to try to win. And again, I appreciate that philosophically, culturally, that's what you want to do. But you just don't have enough talent on the floor. So you can stick to your guns and still lose. And that's what they'll be doing while those guys are trying to get healthy. And in the process, if you find some pieces that can help the big three, if you will, when they get back, then it's a win-win-win.
You went from the Suns to the Bobcats a little over a decade ago, and that was a Suns team that was always competing in the West and competing for NBA championships. You were a key player on that team. Then you went to the Bobcats. Things changed, you know, and the mindset has to change. If you're a player, I know these guys aren't changing teams, but if you're a Steph, you're a Draymond, how does that play with you when you're not competing?
Yeah, it's tough when you go from having something to play for in terms of chasing a championship and knowing going into a season that you're probably not going to have the opportunity to do that. It takes wrapping your mind around. When I got to Charlotte, I realized quickly the only thing that I could really control in that situation was me, the way I acted. And when I first got there, I wasn't happy to be there, but it was just bad, and if I was going to be bad in the process, it was getting worse. So I had to try to be the best pro I could be, continue to be at work, try to lead by example, do what I could on the court. If you are a Golden State Warrior and you're on the floor right now, you are auditioning not only for Golden State, but for every other team in the NBA. So while you may want to make Golden State your home and be a part of championships to come, they may not want you. You now have the opportunity to go out there and show everyone else that you are a viable NBA player, right? So I believe that the guys on the court, whether they're playing for a championship or not, that's the way you treat it. You're a professional basketball player, and everyone is watching the game. So you're not just auditioning for Golden State, but you've got a lot of other eyes on you, and you need to take advantage of your opportunity.
Yeah, they've got rookies starting right now. It's crazy as you saw that list of the players that have started the last 2 games for this Golden State Warriors team. Let's go back to the mid-late 90s. The San Antonio Spurs had a really good stretch, mid-90s. David Robinson, Alamo Dome, they were competing in the West. Then they kind of fell off a cliff late 90s, and we know what happened. They got Tim Duncan. They responded. Now, we're not saying that the Warriors are going to end up in the draft getting somebody like that, but can you see any similarities between a path like this?
Yeah, I mean, look, there was one of the first things I referenced when I heard when Steph was going down was, the possibility of it winding up being something like this Spurs season. The problem is if Steph comes back, and he's only supposed to be out a few months, if he comes back in March and you get Draymond back relatively soon, I think they're good enough to not get a number 1 pick. That was the number 1 pick. The number 1 pick franchise
and a generational
correct.
Number 1 pick.
Yes. If you wind up with the number 6, number 7 pick, number 5 pick when the lottery all shakes out, I don't really see it impacting them the same way as if you were able to come out of the draft with the James Wiseman, if you will.
If you had to guess right now, Warriors, do they even compete for a playoff spot this season?
Oh, no.
Wow.
No.
Okay. Well, they're 2-6 right now. They've lost 6 of their first 8 games. That is Raja Bell joining us here on our CBS Sports YouTube page. You can see him on CBS Sports HQ weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time with Danny Kanell. It's Kanell and Bell. You can also download and subscribe to the podcast.
Our thanks to Chris Hassel and Raja Bell. I'm Tommy Tran here in our Fort Lauderdale studios. Let's continue the conversation with Colin Ward-Henninger, NBA writer. He also puts together our power rankings based out of the Bay Area, and then Kyle Boone, our college hoops writer and NBA draft analyst. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. And Colin, let's start with you. Again, you're out in the West Coast in the Bay Area. You've covered the championship Warriors team. They're used to living in the penthouse. Now they're darn near the basement. Give me the vibe around the Bay Area right now.
Well, I'm glad you didn't say outhouse. It's not quite that bad. But yeah, it has changed quite a bit, to say the least. And, I thought this team would be kind of mopey, a little bit depressed, coming from such a high to such a low. But that's really not the vibe I've gotten. It's been more of just kind of a starting over, a refreshing of the culture out here. And it's more that they have the expectations set that they're not going to be a playoff team. They're not going to be a championship team by any stretch of the imagination. So with the guys out, with Steph Curry's injury, with Draymond Green's injury, now D'Angelo Russell's injury, Steve Kerr has really said, let's get back to basics. Let's throw out half of our playbook and just really concentrate on developing these young guys. So it really is kind of a college atmosphere, I'd have to say. They get really excited when guys do well, and they use every loss and every kind of bad play as a teachable moment. So things have certainly changed out here, but I wouldn't say that there's any sort of moping or depression going on. It's more just a completely shift in focus of what this team's accomplishments will be for this season.
And when we talk about the Warriors, there's the conversation about its owner, Joe Lacob, saying, hey, we're not going to tank, and we will get into that conversation hypothetically, of course, and I'll get to Kyle's thoughts first. But, Colin, what about the comments there from Joe Lacob about the team, and considering where they are right now? Again, they're much closer to being at the cellar dweller than they are being in a playoff spot.
Yeah, he came out and said that they're not going to tank. That's not something that they would philosophically consider. But look, they don't really need to tank. They're going to be bad enough that they're going to lose enough games to get a pretty good lottery pick. Now, Now it comes down to whether they want to, load manage Draymond Green. But Steve Kerr said at the beginning of the season, even before Steph Curry's injury, that they were going to talk about how to handle Draymond and when they could get him rest. He's a guy who's typically been banged up throughout his career, a shoulder, a toe, a hamstring. And now in the past when they might have played him, they might consider sitting him because it would benefit their draft position. Now, whether you consider that tanking or not is kind of, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It doesn't really matter, but they're going to end up having a good draft pick either way.
Kyle, let me turn to you now in terms of this Warriors squad. We put up the notable injuries. Again, we know Kevin Durant's no longer there. Klay Thompson's been hurt. Steph Curry's hurt. D'Angelo Russell's also missed some time. But they do have some young players, right? They got Eric Pascal. They got Jordan Poole, guys that were in college not too long ago. Give me a sense of some of the young guys on this squad right now and how you evaluate them.
Yeah, that's two of the more exciting Warriors prospects on this team, and they are getting a lot of playing time, a lot more than I think a lot of people anticipated because of the injuries that Colin noted. Jordan Poole was a first-round pick in last year's NBA draft, and I thought the Warriors reached a little bit for him, and now we've seen this season that maybe it wasn't so much a reach at all. He's been a really good player for the Warriors, been a really good shooter, and he was a good shooter at Michigan, did not get a lot of opportunities his last season in college, and we're seeing what he can do with more opportunities. Now, Eric Pascal was a really good player at Villanova. He slipped to the second round. I was surprised that he did. He was a first-round prospect in my rankings, and we are seeing what he can do. He's a really good three-point shooter. He's a natural scorer. He's got a great body, a great frame, and he's making the most of his opportunities right now with the Warriors.
Colin, what have you seen from these young guys on the court?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I think everybody, that first game against Charlotte when D'Angelo and Draymond and Steph were all out, everyone thought it was going to kind of be a disaster. But these young guys have really stepped up. As Kyle mentioned, Eric Pascal's been tremendous, and even Steve Kerr has been surprised by his development. He's a guy they thought when they brought in, he's going to be able to contribute to this team. I don't think he saw him going out and scoring 34 points and knocking down 4 3-pointers. And he's just been tremendous, and he's been the go-to guy. Pascal's talked about how he's so empowered by his teammates. Even the veterans on the team look to him and give him the ball and say, hey, go get us a bucket. And he came out that first game against Charlotte and was putting his head down and going to the basket. The next game against Portland, they were backing off of him, so he started knocking down some threes. He said he thought that was important. And the ability to change his direction in the game, to feed off and adapt to what the defense is doing, really advanced for his age. And Jordan Poole, another guy who's getting plenty of opportunity. He's struggled a bit since the injuries just because he's been given a little more playmaking responsibility. And when they brought him in, I think he was meant to kind of be a Klay Thompson clone, running off screens, catch and shoot. Now he's being asked to do a little bit more. But two definitely tremendous players, and they'll probably be a part of the Warriors' future even when they do get healthy.
Yeah, and that's my follow-up there, Colin. In terms of Pascal specifically, we know this is sort of an audition for them out of necessity because of the injuries. But what do you think about Pascal? And you mentioned Poole, but let's focus on the big guy here in terms of his prospects of carrying over not only this season, but potentially with the roster next season.
Yeah, this is going to be great for him. As I mentioned, Kerr saw him as a good piece already, so I don't think he's going to be, part of a big four or anything when all the guys do get healthy. But Pascal will certainly get playing time. He'll be a big part of this team. Remember, they lost Andre Iguodala, they lost Sean Livingston, so they're craving quality players off the bench or even that they could throw into the starting lineup once they do get healthy. Now we're probably talking about next season, not necessarily the end of this season. But all this development, all this opportunity for him to feel out the league, to kind of accelerate his growth is nothing but good for the Warriors moving forward.
All right, so now let's get to the nitty-gritty, which is obviously the conversation of whether the Warriors should tank or not. But before we get to that, the rankings that Kyle has out, their records are via Sportsline. So, Kyle, why don't you talk about, as of just right now, as we know, a few games into the season, where the Warriors slotted right now, and who do you have the Warriors taking in your latest mock?
Yeah, right now the Warriors are going to be a lottery team. Now we'll wait to see kind of what this team looks like for the remainder of the season. I have them taking Precious Achiuwa, Memphis small forward, and he's a true freshman. He's probably going to be a one-and-done prospect. He's got great size. He's got great defensive instincts. And the Warriors need defensive players to add to this roster. I think that's probably one of their main deficiencies right now. I think Achua could absolutely fill that role, and he'd be a really good value add for them in the back end of the lottery.
What about other guys like a Scottie Lewis type? Obviously, those guys are projected to be a little bit higher in the draft, and somehow if the Warriors kind of end up in that position, what would that prospect be like?
That would be the dream scenario for the Warriors. Now, we mentioned Precious Achiuwa, a guy who I think could be a good defender in time, but Scottie Lewis is a perfect two-way wing, and I think he would fit just seamlessly with the Warriors and kind of the direction that they want to go. I think he's going to be a great defender at the NBA level. He's going to be a multi-positional defender, and right now he's not much of kind of a contributor on offense, but I think in time he could make a significant impact as a perimeter defender. And when you're trying to project the Warriors moving forward with Klay Thompson expected to come back, that could be a really, really good defensive tandem, and I think Scottie Lewis could make an impact right away.
All right, so you got Scottie Lewis, sort of a top 4 guy, and somehow, okay, if the Warriors either decide to tank or they have to just be really bad and then the ping pong balls fall their way. So we're talking about top 3 selections, Kyle. And then Colin, I'll let you jump in here. There is a big lottery ticket at the end, especially at number 1. And we know the Warriors, again, have some great guards, so maybe Cole Anthony's no longer on the table or Anthony Edwards on the table. But then there's a guy out at Memphis, too, Mr. Wiseman. If that's something potentially could be a fit, what would that be like there? And how do you evaluate him as a young prospect, Kyle?
I mean, it would just be a cheat code for the Warriors. It would not be fair. He's 7'1". He's got a 7'6" wingspan. And I think he could be a defensive anchor for this Warriors team. And again, we're talking about what the Warriors will look like next season. With Wiseman and Draymond Green, I think that defensive tandem down low would just be an absolute cheat code. I think Wiseman can be a really good defender right away in the NBA. And the Warriors have, over time in the past couple years, really been looking to kind of shore up that position at the center spot. They've kind of swung and missed on a few guys. I think Wiseman could be their long-term solution at that position, and I think his defensive potential is obvious right away, but long term he could be a really good offensive player. And I think for the Warriors iteration in 2020, he could be a guy who could play right away.
That would be the dream. And we look again, Anthony Edwards, some guards there, the 6'3", 6'5" range. Also a player that's in the conversation would be Lamelo Ball. Colin, what would a potential fit like that be with another ball in California, though this time it'd be Northern California with the Warriors and Lamelo?
It would be an interesting fit. I am a little bit curious what that would look like with Stephen Curry and potentially with D'Angelo Russell and with Lamelo Ball. I'm not sure how that would work. I think potentially one of those would have to be moved, and probably the odd man out would maybe be D'Angelo Russell. But if you're trying to maybe try and go for a boom prospect inside the top 3, Lamelo Ball is absolutely that. He's a great shooter. He's maybe got a bad rap as kind of a ball hog, but he is one of the best passers in this draft class. He has great vision on the court. He's playing overseas in the NBL right now for the Illawarra Hawks. He's 6'7". I think he could be one of the best prospects down the line that we look at in this draft class.
Yeah, the only thing I'd be worried about with Lamelo Ball is on the defensive end of the court. The Warriors have obviously struggled there, and that was a big concern with losing Durant, losing Iguodala, Sean Livingston. So as exciting a prospect as Lamelo Ball might be, and the idea of putting him in the backcourt with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, maybe D'Angelo Russell if he's still there, I still think that they'll probably lean towards going towards more of a defensive-minded long wing. But hey, if he's the best player available and it's clear that he's a guy who can change a franchise, I don't know if they'll have any choice. They might just have to go out and take him.
All right, Colin, again, you talked about the vibe and what the team is going through. What about the fan base? What's the fan base? Look, they have a new building. It's paid for, all that good stuff. Lots of great success this decade. But what's Dub Nation feeling right now with this really slow start?
It's been weird, and they moved to a new building in San Francisco, a new city in Chase Center, so there were already concerns that they would kind of lose that energy that they had in Oracle that became so famous in Oakland at that arena. But it started off slow. I think the expectations were high, even with the injury to Thompson and the departure of Durant. I think the fans thought this was still going to be a competitive team. So when they started off so slowly, you could see empty seats in the arena. It was very quiet. But now that they've got this kind of G League squad out there, you've seen the fans really rally around them. And those games against Charlotte and Portland at Chase Center were the most fun that the crowd was having. They were into it. They were chanting MVP for Eric Paschall. So it's just been a change of expectation. I think now that that's occurred and the fans know what they're dealing with, the crowd's going to have more energy and more excitement.
All right, that's one final thought from Colin. Kyle, I'll give you one more thought before we let you go. Again, when you have put together your latest mock draft, has there been a common theme? Obviously, we're getting a lot of freshmen again, kids playing overseas. I say kids, but obviously young men. What's sort of the one thing that stood out to you as you've been putting this early list together?
Depends on where they fall, obviously, but I think the Warriors, as Colin has noted time and again, they need defense. I think if the Warriors are going to end up probably in the back half of the lottery, a two-way wing makes a lot of sense. And we mentioned Scottie Lewis earlier. Another guy that I think Warriors fans should keep in mind is Khalil Whitney from Kentucky. He is a two-way wing. He's 6'6". He's got go-go gadget arms. He's 7-foot wingspan, and I think he's got really good defensive instincts. Again, kind of like Scottie Lewis, I think in time he could be a plus scorer, but the Warriors don't really need offense. They only need defense. And I think he could absolutely give that to them. Would make a lot of sense for Whitney and the Warriors to find a pairing and somewhere in that back half of the lottery.
Good point there. You talk about what they're missing. Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, guys with length, guys that were defensive guys that worked very well during those championship runs. All right, our thanks to Colin Ward-Henninger and Kyle Boone joining us here with a look at the Warriors. Should they tank, what to do, what they look like, and potentially who could be on that roster in 2020. Guys, thanks very much.